First, I just want to thank everybody for being here. I know that the President has really made getting veterans back to work a priority for him. And after Monday's announcement, it's just become increasingly obvious how much having private organizations partner with a federal effort has really helped to improve this effort. So I appreciate what you're doing for veterans, what you're doing for our military families, and for your time today. We're joined today by Matt Flavin, who's our Director of Veterans and Wounded Warrior Policy, and Brad Cooper, who's the Executive Director of Joining Forces, and also Junior Ortiz, who's the Assistant Secretary for Veterans Employment. And we're just going to have a discussion on what you're doing in your own individual capacity, what we can be doing better, and how your lives have been changed by the work that you do. So thank you again.
Thank you very much, Darian. As Darian said, it's an honor to have you all here today. You all are doing great work, which is why we're very excited to have this conversation. I run what's called the Task Force on Veterans, Military Families, and Wounded Warriors here at the White House. Got out of the service in 2007 and sort of stumbled into these jobs. Unfortunately, most veterans who are getting out right now don't have that sort of easy transition, and we've seen even recently the unemployment rate for post 9/11 veterans tick up as the national unemployment rate has ticked down slightly. So there has to be a sense of urgency here, especially as we look at the coming tide. Between 2011 and 2016, we'll have 1 million new separators from the active duty force. So we definitely feel it here. We've tried to get ahead of this problem, but the private sector, community organizations are really where this work is done, and they're a crucial partner in anything we try to do. Many of you probably saw Monday, the President and the Rose Garden, along with the American Legion, VFW, Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America, and the Disabled American Veterans, rolled out a comprehensive employment package for veterans. This included aspects of the American Jobs Act, the Hiring Heroes Tax Credit, and the Wounded Warriors Tax Credit, which, hopefully we'll see Congress pass here shortly. The credit for those veterans who are unemployed for a period of 6 months is $5,600, and for those with a service-connected disability is up to $9,600. So there are real incentives, we think, for the private sector to take these people on. But not that they should need that type of incentive. I mean, the veterans who we see getting out of the force are highly skilled, highly disciplined, highly motivated. And as some of you around the table have made these commitments to hire them, you know the value you're getting from today's veterans. I'm going to let Junior talk about some of the other initiatives that were rolled out on Monday in terms of the Veterans Gold Card and My Next Move. We also had a program called the Veterans Job Bank, which I know in your work with Brad Cooper at Joining Forces, you've probably heard some about that in terms of how we hope to make it more accessible for veterans looking for employment to find employers who want to take the time to hire veterans, who want to make that commitment to hire veterans, and at the same time make sure the employers, many of who have come to us and said, how do I actually go about finding veterans, they have that access to that veteran population. And then I would be remiss, because I know some of you here are also parts of community organizations. What we've seen in the reintegration back from deployed life, from the active duty service, National Guard, reserves, is that these veterans and their families go back to communities. So while we've increased the VA budget by historic proportions, in fact, the largest percentage increase in 30 years, while we've added new programs for post-traumatic stress disorder and traumatic brain injury, that's not enough, because the communities need to take ownership of the challenges that we face. And I know, it happens in San Antonio, it happens in places like Augusta, Georgia, and we need it to happen in other places too. The communities are a key element as we look at some of the challenges that this generation of veterans and their families face. With that, I do want to turn it over to Junior Ortiz, who's doing great work over at the Department of Labor, also a veteran, and Brad, who won't talk about it, is actually an active duty Navy captain. So greatly outranks me. My retired rank. Well, Junior, go ahead.
And I'm Junior Ortiz. I introduced myself to some of you all, and first of all, I want to thank you all for being here. I am extremely proud of the fact of being able to work with some of you all, and I've gotten to know some of the organizations that you represent. On our side of the house, what we want to try and do is we want to try and first give you an idea of what we do in DOL. What we're doing is transitioning our service members. Our job is to prepare them, to provide opportunities, the opportunity to get employed, and of course to protect their rights. And one of the things that we do is, as far as protection, is the USERRA side of the house, the young guards and reserves that are going out there that have had jobs in the past, go out, get called to active duty, come back, and may lose their job. For whatever that reason may be, we are the enforcement agency to be able to protect their rights when it comes to that. The second piece is to prepare them. What we try to do is a transition assistance program. And the transition assistance program, it's the employment workshop piece. Help them understand what they need in order to achieve the requirements to get a good job. In other words, prepare them across the board. We work with we have about 3,000 state workforce agencies, our one-stop shops that have in every single state. That's the first piece. Second piece is we also have representatives from DOL that work in every one of the states and actually go out there to help prepare these young men and women. The last thing is to provide them the opportunity. And as Matt mentioned already, one of the biggest initiatives that the President has just brought out was the Gold Card Initiative. And the Gold Card Initiative, what it is every single veteran has, when they go into the one-stops, has the opportunity, has preference. In other words, preferential treatment in the sense of going in there and getting a job and being able to do what needs to be done. What this Gold Card Initiative will do is give them 6 months of intensive services. In other words, one-on-one, almost like a case management kind of thing, to be able to help them turn around and get what they need specifically. So, for example, if Russell comes in, Russell and I will become very good friends for the next 6 months, because we'll follow through on a lot of things to make sure that it works the way it should work. Not that that's not happening with every one of our veterans now. However, in this case, when they bring it in, that's specifically for them, and it's for our 9/11, post 9/11 GIs, male and females. The other piece that we have is what we call the My Next Move for Veterans. My Next Move for Veterans is probably one of the best things that's come out, because it's an opportunity for a veteran to put in their MOS or their NEC or their job specialty. What's happened in the past is you put in certain information and you kind of get an idea of what it is. What this does is actually breaks down specifically that MOS. So for example, if you're in 11 Bravo, which in the Army is an infantry guy, right? I didn't know that. Marines don't have that. We have infantry guys, we just don't have that kind of Bravo stuff. The fact was, we put it in there and it actually came out with different things. And the funny part, and I use 11 Bravo when I use an infantry guy, is because a lot of these infantry kids come out and they go, you know, I was a grunt, I carried a rifle, I did this, but I really didn't have those kind of skills. Well, when you put it in there, it actually shows you what the capabilities are that you have. And it kind of gets them reignited and saying, you know what, I do have that, I do this. It also shows what the comparable pay is going to be and where to find a job specifically in their state. They'll actually put in there in their state where they're doing, so it'll pop up. It may be a guy who handles some certain kind of communications or things of that nature, but it gives them an opportunity to look at the specifics in that state. So those two initiatives have been really, really good. The TAP program that we talked about is now being redesigned so that it makes sure that we take care of the kids as they, and I say kids because I have 4 of them. I have 4 that are in the military, so I can call them kids right now. The idea is to be able to transition them effectively in a way that meets their needs. For example, if the 3 of us are going in, you know, the good captain over here probably doesn't need as much transitioning as somebody else may. Matt may need a little bit more than the rest of us, or I may not need as much. So what we do is we assess them first, get them to be placed in that position, so that way we can train them specifically on what they need. That's what the new TAP redesign is. Overall, guys, the biggest thing that we want to be able to tell you is these young men and women have skills, as you already know. that have capabilities of not only doing good things out there in the community and for you all, but in a business sense to help your business grow. There's some of the finest ladies and gentlemen that you will ever need to help do what needs to be done with your organizations. And you know, as I always say, there's no employer tell me where there's an employee that's willing to give up their lives for you in a drop of a hat and never even question it. Those are the kind of kids that we have out there, and that's what we're trying to do. Get that message out there. Sir?
Great, great. It's amazing how he looks so young. He was an instructor of mine in college. When I was in college. It's tremendous. Great American. Hey, so let's talk a little bit about a baseline conversation about joining forces, and I've had the wonderful privilege to be able to work with several of you in this capacity, and it's been an absolute thrill, and I think your presence here represents the very best part of what joining forces is, and that's really leveraging the capacity of this country to step up and give back to those who've given so much. As many of you know, the First Lady and Dr. Biden announced joining forces a little more than 6 months ago, and they did it as an effort to energize and rally the country and pull on every sector of our society. The government is certainly doing everything that they can and more. And when I say every sector, you just think about what the capacity in our communities are. We have individuals and businesses, community support networks themselves, nonprofits, faith-based institutions, organizations who just have enormous ability. And in this country, it really is about capacity for goodness. And bring this group together, and particularly in the world of employment and education and well-being of our veterans and their families, and give something back. And as I've told several of the folks in this room who I've had a chance to chat with over the last couple of weeks, let's first, in the world of employment, it's what's the capacity of the country to take on the type of talent that we know is in the military, both in the active force and the reserve component. Bring them into your company and do it because it makes good business sense. It's great to do it because it's patriotic, but because it makes good business sense, because the level of talent of the person that you're getting is extraordinary. And that approach is consistent with our ask, which is do what you do best. And the American private sector does extraordinary things well. Folks at Tyson Foods bring in great talent and employ them, and the company benefits and the individual benefits. Communities do what they do best by rendering care, connecting people, leveraging capacity. That's terrific. So we are not trying to change a duck into a chicken. We want everyone to be able to do what they do best and do just a little bit more because it makes good sense for the individual, the company, and the organization. I will also say that there has been an enormous groundswell of support of late, and it's reflected on the great commitments that we've had recently in employment, in particular, with Pat Nixon leading American Logistics and a 25,000 veteran and spouse hiring commitment announced just a few weeks ago by the First Lady and joined by the President. Those types of things, moving large chunks of capacity, impact people in a very personal way, and I think that's an important point. Joining forces, I got two bits of instruction from the First Lady, and I'm mindful of this every day. We should take efforts and do things that deliver impact and have effect. And there's no better impact and effect than to be able to impact an individual with a job. That's the start of so many things for an individual and a family. So the impact that the group here who are engaged in the employment world has had is extraordinary, and I think we're just at the infancy of that. Then the last piece I'd like to say is, and it springboards off what Matt mentioned with respect to communities. It really is all about an individual coming back and going to the community. You don't return to a base, you return to the people who impact your job, people who impact you and your children and your spouse's education and your health care and your well-being. And so we look to great models, as Matt said, like San Antonio and Augusta, to springboard off what they do and use those lessons and help spread those to other communities throughout the country. Not lost on us is there are a lot of communities who are doing great things, but there are a lot of folks who are doing it just plain great, and we want to take those and move those around the country. So I'll end by saying thanks for all that you're doing. I know for the ones that I know in a more, in a closer level, that your impact is extraordinary, and I appreciate it. I know the first person that you have hired, and there's no doubt that's already happened, appreciates it, and the impact that you've had is really significant, and we look forward to sustaining the relationship. So thanks so much.
I think with that, what we'd like to do is just go quickly around the room and hear from each of you, hear about sort of how you got here briefly, where you're coming from, and then also the veterans who some of you have brought along with you. So we'll start here with Judith.
Good morning. I'm Judith Markels. I'm the director of the Warrior and Family Support Center at what was Brooke Army Medical Center, is now SAMC, San Antonio Military Medical Complex or something. What's the C? Center. Doesn't really matter what you call it. What it is one of the 2 largest military treatment facilities in this nation, taking care of wounded warriors and their families. Background on me, and I don't provide jobs, is that in 2003, I was asked by BAMC to open a small center in the guest house because the concern was readily becoming apparent that especially for the average age of our warriors, 18 to 22, I'm with you, they're children. And if you have 1 doctor's appointment a week, you spend the rest of it in the barracks alone, and depression was beginning to rear its ugly head. In that amount of time, I guess we are living proof of what a community can do. In 2007, I was approached. We were at 1,000 square feet at the time. I was approached by a former Marine, Les Huffman, who wanted to know what I wanted. So I said I wanted a new building. And just like I would have said I wanted a 27-year-old husband with a Ferrari. It wasn't happening, you know that. And my husband loves these things. And so, believe it or not, in September of 2007, we broke ground for a totally civilian-funded facility. It opened 16 months after that, $5.6 million, 12,500 square feet. It is total civilian money through a project called Returning Heroes Home. It is open 13 hours a day, 7 days a week, and a living example of what a community can truly do. Other than our salaries, everything you see in that facility, everything we do in that facility is paid for by donated dollars, predominantly from our community. Next to me is Charles Dominguez. Charles is a wounded warrior. And when we were in the other building, after he was a military policeman, during the process of recovery, he volunteered there, and I got to see his work ethic, and I got really lucky. The day after he got his DD-214, he came to work with me, and he has been ever since. Some days are good that way. But I represent, in addition to a community that is unbelievably supportive, make sure that we keep in the equation that the wounded warriors certainly are our heroes, but their families, the sacrifice that these moms and wives have made. These people also need our help finding jobs to be the person that they used to be, predominantly women, that they used to be before the day they got the phone call from Casualty, because their lives changed forever. They have lost jobs, they have lost everything, and somehow these women predominantly are going to have to regroup, and they need our help, just like their children need our help.
Oh, finished? Oh, I was getting into your story.
No.
That's such a great story.
Hey, give me 45. We're good.
But it is, if some of you have not been down to see this center, it is really remarkable, incredibly powerful to go in there and see these families together. It's their own space. There's volunteers who come in, who serve meals. It really is the essence of what you'd want to see out of a community. And that's sort of the epicenter, and San Antonio does a lot of great things. And it's because of people like Judith down there. So thank you for being here, and thank you, Charles, for being here as well.
Thanks so
Thank
much.
you.
That's terrific.
Thank you. Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Maurice Wilson. I'm the co-founder of an organization called the National Veterans Transition Services. And what we did was created a program called Reboot. And Reboot is a 3-week behavioral-based reintegration process, sort of like what the president called a reverse boot camp. And the understanding is that if we put our soldiers, sailors, and airmen and Marines through 8 to 12 weeks of boot camp to pretty much convert them and shape them and mold them into the lean, mean fighting machine that our nation needs, then on the back end, we may need to do something similar as we reintegrate them in. So that's the whole process and the purpose for Reboot, which is to sort of restore them back to that civilian side, leaving in the elements that, made them who they are and helped us, win wars, but also turning on and turning off switches so they can return back to civilian life. We've been running the program in San Diego for about a year and a half. We've trained 300 individuals, a good cross-section of Navy, Marine Corps, Army, Air Force, officer enlisted, male, female, with pretty good results. We've actually brought in Vietnam-era veterans, Desert Shield, Desert Storm veterans, as well as some of the spouses, and put them through the workshop with amazing results. And it's a three-phase process that really helps them rebuild, empower them, their independence, and put them back on track. And that's the whole goal, is to get them to independency, get them out of military mindset mode, because you know, being in the service is like being in a very strong culture that you have to do it a certain way. And many times a person doesn't know physically or mentally that they're in a different place. Their body may be in a different place, but the mind is still over there. And so you could change the job, but you don't change the behavior. Just because you've taken the uniform off doesn't mean that the person has changed on the inside. And to do that, you really have to go in and apply some kind of change at a subconscious level. And that's what Reboot does. 3 weeks of very intensive behavior modification. We've had, of 390 individuals, no one has dropped out. Very empowering. After about the third or fourth day, you can see individuals beginning to reconnect with themselves, and then they start reconnecting with their families. And in many cases, husbands or spouses go ask their spouses to come and go through the workshop. So we've had several spouses go through the workshop as well that re-energized and rebuilt the family back up again. The end result is 82.5% of our graduates are all either working or going to school. They're self-empowered. And what we do is create networks where they can lean on one another, because you know in the military, you're part of a tight group. It's a team. And you lose that team when you get outside the military. But the way we've structured our workshops is usually 20 to 25 individuals in the workshop. They build a bond during those 3 weeks. And when they graduate and they complete the workshops, they stay connected, so they have mentors. And it's good to have peer-to-peer based mentors, because that's someone you can call on the phone, send them an email, LinkedIn, Facebook, or tweet them, or something along that line. Hey, this is where I'm at, can you give me a little dose of something? And it really helps them make the reintegration. I founded this in collaboration with a retired 2-star admiral by the name of Ronnie Froman. And the way we got into this whole process was in 2009, both Ronnie and I became members of the Call of Duty Endowment. And the endowment was formed in 2009 to provide funding support to veteran service organizations throughout the nation that were helping veterans get jobs. And as an advisory member, as Ronnie and I were vetting out different organizations, we always noticed that the funding that we were providing to these organizations generally helped the individual after they hit rock bottom. It wasn't before, it was after. And so we started looking at, well, who's helping in the middle? And as we began the research and looking for who's helping in the middle, there really weren't too many organizations out there addressing the gap, and the gap was the behavior piece. Everything else we had, you know, TAP does a great job of what it does. A lot of the veteran service organizations do a phenomenal job helping lift the person back up. But the goal for us is to prevent the spiral in the first place. So it's a prevention and intervention process that says if we can apply this concept, and if it works, then we could alleviate a lot of suffering, save a lot of dollars, and move forward and actually set a good tone for our future service members that'll look at this and say, hey, they took care of them, I know they're gonna take care of me. And so I could go on and on and on, just like Judith. If you gave me another 45 minutes, yeah, I'd keep talking. But I'll stop there and, you know, allow the conversation to move to other colleagues and come back when some questions start.
And again, you know, it is a breakthrough program for exactly that reason, to take a holistic view of the service member along with his or her family, and make sure up front that we provide that energy, that intervention, so that 6 months, year, 2 years down the road, we aren't in a more serious situation trying to pull that person out of homelessness or substance abuse. And you know, some people transition just fine, but you're right. Everyone that goes overseas, everyone that deploys, everyone that fights in war is changed in some way. And to come back, there is a transition period, and I think you all have done an amazing job, the work you've done to provide a thorough and very real transition every way to those service members and their families. So thank you for the work you do.
Good afternoon. I'm Pat Nixon, president of the American Logistics Association. And just as a follow-up to some of the comments we've heard already, I can tell you I'm really honored to be here, even though I guess in a certain extent, we're the ones being honored, but when I hear the stories of the commitments people have made and the leadership provided by the White House, it truly is, this truly is an example of a partnership where public-private ventures can do incredible things for America. ALA is a 90-year-old trade association. We're headquartered here in Washington, D.C. We're about 4 blocks away, so I think I had the shortest trip of all of you. Our mission is promote, protect, and enhance the military resale programs, and I'll decode that. That's the commissaries, exchanges, and MWR programs on a base. All of you veterans, I'm sure, are familiar with those and how they helped you navigate your life while you're in the military. And we have 270 member companies, some of the largest consumer packaged goods companies in the world. We're honored to have 2 members of the association here today, Tyson Food and Europac Services, and I'm sure when you hear their story, you'll recognize that in the military resale business channel, the commitment to taking care of the military is part of the culture of the business. So I think one of the things we were able to do, and as Brad said, in our commitment to a goal of hiring 25,000 military family members and veterans, is capitalize on awareness that leads to execution. And the awareness on the part of what we found is when we bring the corporate leaders from these companies in and expose them to the military, they fall in love with it. When they see what the commitment that the military and their families make to America, there's nothing that they can't do for them. And so mustering the support for the 25,000 hired people say, well, how did you do it? We just spread the word and got out of the way and let the companies step up. And when you hear their stories, that's the real benefit here. The military resale channel, and that's the agencies, federal agencies, and the business partnership is probably one of the best examples of a public-private venture that exists in the United States because of the commitment to do things efficiently, deliver benefits that are needed, and take care of the military family members. I'm honored to have with me today my business colleague and my friend, Russ Moffett, who is our Vice President of Commissary Operations. Russ served in the Air Force, achieved the rank of Chief Master Sergeant, which is will tell you just how qualified he is, and from transitioning from service in the Air Force to the private sector and now to the association business where he serves at the level of Vice President. I can tell you that he's a living demonstration of the commitment that a veteran has to give back, and so we're pleased about that. We're honored to be here. I look forward to our discussions. Brad, thanks for
I think it's and what Pat and the team have done is, I think, reflective of great capacity, but more than just capacity, it's making the employment of veterans and families a priority, and making it from the leadership down, making it the effort to do it and communicate that. I think that's the incredible power of the success that you've had. I had the privilege of joining ALA at a convention in Orlando, and the energy in the room when the crescendo moment of committing to hire veterans and spouses was incredible. And it was led by Pat and the team here. Great to be a part of it, and it's something I think that we can begin to try to replicate around the country.
Thank you. I'm Jed Becker with Europac Service Incorporated, and I'm fortunate to have with me today a Iraqi War veteran in the form of Steve Gifford, our Corporate Director of Human Resources. I'd like to start by pointing out that Steve joined our corporation not because we felt a core debt of gratitude for his service. Steve joined our corporation because he was far and away the most capable, competent, best suited Director of Human Resources we could have in our corporation. And the only reason I make note of that is, through my initial introduction to joining forces and through the privilege of meeting with you, Brad, our initiative has been along 2 lines. In the one case, we employ hundreds of people who are either dependents or veterans. But more significantly, I think my role, particularly since I've been introduced to joining forces and learning more about this initiative, learning more about our national challenge to employ veterans, is the fact that I think in many regards corporations find safe solutions that don't include hiring veterans. And I've learned to appreciate that. I think through the efforts of Secretary Ortiz, through the efforts of Mr. Wilson, the various organizations, it's a 2-pronged initiative. for it to be successful. On the one hand, to better prepare competent human resources for their transition, but on the other side, I would face a very tall order if I were to try to convince other members of the corporate community that they want to take an initiative here because these are deserving members of the workforce. Instead, I think any success I've had in trying to perpetuate the sense of opportunity, it's been through recognizing that their own organizations are inclined to not take risks on someone who doesn't have terms in their resume that match the database that they're putting it up against. So that instead, in the long term, the real purpose is to better educate potential employers for the tremendous competitive advantage they will find, as we have found, in hiring this talent that wouldn't naturally match what they consider to be their objectives. So when I think of the term joining forces from the beginning, I think we viewed it as being an initiative that we were aiding in by hiring people with backgrounds that were associated with the military. What I've come to discover is my walk in life makes me more competent as a proponent that will help expand the number of employers who understand the opportunity they are foregoing if their leadership doesn't engage in a deliberate strategy of taking advantage of an opportunity that is fleeting and that will end up in the hands of their competitors if they're late to the game. So it's been a wonderful experience for me. I appreciate the opportunity. Frankly, the competitive advantage I have gained by the insight you all have helped me pick up in the course. So.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nick Baldwin. I'm the founder of Two Marines Moving. It's my pleasure today to have Lance LaRue with me. He was one of my dispatchers, also was in the Marines as well, along with the majority of my staff. We pretty much exclusively hire people that are either going into the military, people that are currently in the military, or people that were in the military. So it's a very unique culture that we have. I myself served in 2002 is when I joined, shortly after 9/11, and then went overseas to Iraq 2003. My enlistment lasted until 2008, got out, and found myself needing employment. And at that time, I've always had an entrepreneur background, and so I was looking to solve a problem so that I can make some money off of it and hire some veterans. And so I'd always get phone calls from people, hey, can you come help me move? Can you come help me move? Can you come help me take care of this? And at the time, it was, it wasn't a problem, help a friend out, but the pizza and the beer weren't paying the bills. So then I started the company actually on the Marine Corps birthday, November 10th, 2008. And then it really just took off from there. And so we kept with our core values of, or my core hiring standards rather, of hiring exclusively people in the military community. So rather than just trying to use that name to gather business and don that cap of the integrity and the work ethic, everything else that goes along with being a Marine, that is what we embody, and that's who we hire. And so it's really taken off from there. We've grown at over 100% year over year, and that was after starting this in the depths of the recession. So other companies are laying off, and we were hiring. And they were doing it because we have, people in our community here in the DC area, we're right there in Alexandria, that, recognize that they're going to get people that are going to work hard on their job, they're going to get the job done, there's not going to be stuff missing after their job's complete. It's those simple things, or the things that should be so simple, that are so uncommon with a lot of my peers. So, yeah, it's done extremely well since then. And then I've had the privilege to watch quite a few of my guys grow up over the last 3 years, and some of them moved on to other positions, some within the federal workforce, others, as Frank was talking about with the matchup, not having the exact skills that would match up on a resume that an HR rep is looking at. And then me or one of my other staff, my dispatchers, recognizing, that person might actually be good at sales. And before, they were a crew chief on a helicopter, like no direct transition whatsoever. But they had a natural talent about them, a natural smile, a natural way that they dealt with people, where once it was recognized, they've taken that and were given an opportunity at my company, and they've either excelled and moved up at my company, or they've taken that skill and gone on to do better elsewhere, which I've fully encouraged. So it's been 3 years now, and tomorrow actually to the day. and we've had a great run, and look forward to, you know, being able to hire more veterans. I'd like to be able to say, you know, this time next year we grow another 100% and employ 120 people instead of just 60. So, yeah, that's my company. And
So I think this is another great example. I mean, you spoke to the competitive advantage they have that gives you your company. What we've seen also in the small business realm is that veterans are uniquely suited to thrive in small business. They, you know, again, for those same reasons, they're disciplined. This generation in particular is very innovative because a lot of them have been called to do tasks on the battlefield that are unprecedented. They've had to react to certain situations that they may not have even had the training for. So we've tried to encourage small business where we can, and it'll be interesting at some point to hear your thoughts on what we could do better as administration through the Small Business Administration, as well as through some of our private sector partners like the Entrepreneurship Boot Camp for Veterans, which is run out of Syracuse. We really are interested in growing veterans' participation in the small businesses. And you guys have done a great job. You're a great example of someone who's succeeded. And you know, we do find that when veterans start a business, they hire veterans. And so it's a credit to you, and you know, thank you for being here.
And you know, I want to add to that, Nick. We've been a recipient of your company, and the one thing that's
I'm here, I'm thinking it's pretty good.
and you guys have done really well. And as Matt was saying, I think you guys are a real good case study to give to Mike Haney because of how you went about doing it. I mean, you know, got the trucks, took care of what needed to be taken care of, you know, got your license, and then did it on a kind of like, you know, let me try it this way, let me try it this way, and everything else. And having seen your guys perform directly, I mean, having them come in, you know, yes sir, no sir, being able to do the things. I mean, it's been really good. So we definitely want to bring it up to Mike up in Syracuse, because I think you guys are best case scenario.
Thank you.
Terrific.
Good morning. My name is Russell Tooley. I head up the corporate and international HR, and so on behalf of Tyson Foods, I want to thank you guys for having us here today. And but I'll start off by introducing the most important person from Tyson here, James David, which is our representing veteran. Spent time in the active duty and is now active in the reserves. You know, as I talk about what we look for from a skill and from a leadership standpoint, you just need to look to my left, because James is a perfect example of what the military has and can provide. He's been there 2 years and done a fantastic job. For guys like me, he's been around 25 years. We better hurry up and get retired because they're coming. You know, a little bit about Tyson, and you know, we got our friends Pat Nixon and Russell down here, that we've been a part of being able to supply the military commissaries for around 50 years. We're very proud of that. You know, we are a multi-protein, multi-product business now, not only domestically but globally. Our international group is, you know, we're taking on a big venture today that is going to grow tremendously in China and India and Brazil and other places. So, you know, our business is growing. We're maintaining and growing some domestically, but definitely a lot internationally. We have a lot of opportunities. I will tell you, at Tyson, it's not just about the work, it's about the culture. And any of you, I know Junior's been at Tyson, he's experienced that. That's very important to us. Our CEO and COO and senior leadership team, that is the #1 goal they have, is talent development is their #1 goal. Talent development, period, right? And we take that very seriously, so it's important not only to develop the people we have, but go find the right people. Our new slogan will be making great food, making a difference. So, you know, our people take it very seriously about making a great quality food that's nutritious to feed our families, but your families and families worldwide. That's very important to us. So, you know, we look at it as we've already been providing food to the military. You know, these military veterans have already been making a difference in another venue. So, you know, it fits perfectly to have the military men and women coming out to go to work for Tyson. You know, when we hired James, we were competing against a big pharmaceutical company in a pretty big city, and he chose Tyson. And we, you know, he'll tell you a lot of that wasn't just the work, but it was the culture that's there and how we treat people. If you go out to our website, we have core values. We talk very openly about not only the work you do, but what we expect from you and how you should conduct yourself. And so when you look at our business model, and go look at the men and women coming out of the military that are very, very skillful, high leadership, really have great core values and a lot of respect and dignity. You know, they fit perfectly into our culture and allow us to continue that and grow. You know, for guys like myself, these young men and women are extremely talented, and we better hurry up and get to retirement age because, you know, I'll be working for James, and that'd be okay too. But, you know, one thing that we have done to really try to emphasize that, we've cast our net wider, try to go out and get more people from the military to apply for jobs at Tyson. We have 4 business resource groups, a men, a women's, a multicultural, and a veterans. And some companies call them infinity groups. We call them business resource groups. But our veterans business resource group has worked with our recruiting department to start a program called Camo to Khaki. So if you go to our website, this is the only day you're going to see me in a coat and tie. I'm normally in khakis. So we really was working on how do you get people from camo to khaki, right? And not only from once they get at Tyson and the onboarding, but you know, a lot of times when we get a resume in, you have that same dilemma everybody has. It's okay, what does that mean from this side? And there is companies that try to help you translate that, but we thought it was even a better advantage for us to use our internal, already working at Tyson people. So if I get an Air Force resume, I give it to James that works for Tyson, knows what Tyson is, Tyson looks like, knows where our job is, and goes, yeah, that's really close. So we're trying to use that and other internal resources to hire more than we've even done in the past. So, you know, we're very excited. You know, our company is growing. We have good opportunities. We think the cultural fit is fantastic. And so we're going to be working very diligently to even do more than we've done.
That's excellent. Terrific. Charge. Love it.
Well, listen, I think what we want to do is talk a little further with each of you in terms of, you know, some of what you just provided, that perspective, you know, how you do hiring and onboarding at your company, you know, how you got a person like James to come on board, and then how you utilize James for analyzing other folks who want to come in, making sure it's the right fit, making sure it's the right culture. You know, I don't know if you all have similar processes built in. If you want to talk about those, we'd love to hear.
Well, in several different approaches. I think the many of our members of our workforce who have ties to the military are dependent spouses, and in that instance, in many cases, they're performing services around the world in a workforce that is moving principally on the basis of a spouse's career. And you know, I think one of the key attributes to success in working with that group is educating and leading throughout our organization an appreciation for what can we do to maintain and retain that workforce while they follow another career. And I think in some instances you could look at it from a practical standpoint and say, well, no, if someone's working in Yokosuka, suddenly the next thing you know they're heading to Naples, it's over. Well, it is, unless someone's really sat down and done the math. What did it take to train that person to a level of competency that we were getting in Yokosuka, so that their counterpart in Naples doesn't say, oh no, I've already had so-and-so waiting in the wings. Well, it takes a certain corporate discipline to say, you may have had somebody waiting in the wings, but let me tell you something. We're in pretty deep with this person. And again, I'll take most of my examples back to core business principles and not, you know, leaning so much on obligation or responsibility to a party, but because I think it's easier for business people to understand advantage in business terms. And so what we do is we develop a corporation that appreciates the value of the continuity of service, the investment that we've already made in someone. And so fine, it may present some economic impact on the far end that you have to accommodate, but did anyone do the full math from a position that was responsible on some level for things going on in Yokosuka and Naples, because otherwise the correlation, the connection, and the economic efficiency of that total formula is overlooked. Because the person who has responsibility for a market here is going to say, I don't necessarily want to hire that person. Well, so what we've discovered, again, it comes back to leadership. Does the business enterprise itself recognize the value in a population or workforce that's different? But again, if they look at it as that difference as being negative, they'll probably lose out. If they look at that difference as being an opportunity, they will win.
So, obviously, we're in vehement agreement with you on this. You know, they're getting real quality people when they take on veterans and military spouses. There is a lot of goodwill. Adam O'Mullen used to refer to the sea of goodwill that exists out there, and we think that exists too in the business community. But you're right. There's a business case which is different from, you know, I support the troops. I wanna do something positive for the troops, and maybe that's, you know, from the business giving money, which is a good thing too.
It's a very
you know?
good thing.
I'm not
Yes,
gonna-
much.
And Matt, I just want to make note that you know, we are actively engaged in a lot of different dimensions of trying to support that community. I guess my only concern is that if we're not careful, often these conversations can lean more in favor. You know, I'm
Right.
trying to be the ballast here,
Yeah.
only because I've found that an audience is more responsive to my ideas and my learnings, the better I can do to equate them back to the terms they're most familiar with.
Yeah, and that's right. I guess how do we? And that's going to be my question. How do we make sure that more business and business leaders understand in the way that I think you've come to understand, and Tyson understands, and obviously ALA understands, you know, the business case here. How do we do a better job of spreading that message?
I think, Matt, one of the things we can do as an association, we try to do is serve as a clearinghouse for the success stories and the examples of, here's how one company's doing it, as long as it's not viewed as giving a competitive advantage to someone else. Here's how one company's successfully navigating through this. And maybe it'll work for you. I think if there could be a national clearinghouse for success stories on how the business community can step up, and the examples of here's how a company does it. I think Russell, your example was spot on having in-house experts that can review employment applications and make decisions on how they fit. I think every company ought to know that it's not impossible. There are ways to do it, and let's step up. Let's take the next step.
Some of it also comes just from the first experience for that hiring manager, because what it comes down to is Russell and I can give the hiring manager all the resumes we want. At a certain point, they're going to pick someone, and I've had the experience at a prior job. I was in charge of human resources for a quick lube oil change chain, and I had three resumes, and I gave them to the district manager along with a resume of E6 who had just gotten out. I said, okay, you can interview those. You're going to interview this guy even though you didn't want to. And he was the one who got hired because he's an E6. His resume was horrible, but I said, okay, he can be in charge of 5 guys and a $500,000 P&L without any trouble at all. And after that first experience the hiring manager has, then they're less scared. But I've been on the other side of the interview where I'm the first Iraq War vet they've ever met. They've heard about it, but they've never actually met someone. And in some cases, I think I got called in just out of curiosity. But at the end of the day, it's getting that individual. Organizationally, we get it, but it's getting that particular manager to realize, okay, they haven't had this exact job title. Their hair's kind of short, but I think they can get it there.
And I got to tell you, I think one of the biggest things that we have, and especially in the Department of Labor when it comes to the employment piece, is to educate you all. And as strange as that may sound, we have a lot of employers who turn around and say, you know, I want to hire veterans all over the place. I just don't know how. And then when we give them the tools to actually do it, and they pass it on to the hiring managers, they do exactly what you said, because they don't understand this piece. Being able to at least give them the tools, if you will, and the understanding of what is it that a veteran brings to the table. That's the first part. You know, what's the value that they bring to you? What is the the piece that you need to understand in order to be able to read a resume that's not exactly in the same criteria. Or the other piece is to turn around and educate your hiring managers, because as CEOs, every one of you can turn around and say, like you, I want you to interview this guy. And sooner or later, they'll get hired, because we always know that if the resume is just a piece of paper to get you an interview. Once you get the interview, most likely you'll get hired, because you have that. And so what I always tell the employers is, and the hiring managers, is look at the resume, bring the kid in, or the person in, look in their eyes, and then ask the questions. Because there is where you will understand if this is a fit for you or not. It may not be exactly the right aspects, and I know on the Tyson side of the house how they do it, but the fact of the matter is, once you sit down with that person, it gives you the opportunity to say, oh, okay, I didn't know what this was. Ah, okay, that's exactly what I'm looking for. So it's a matter of education, and that's something that we, as part of this whole entire thing, would, at least on my side of the house, I need your help to educate our hiring managers. I need your help to educate the civilian populace out there to understand what that is.
I think Pat brings up a good point, though. You know, the education, the HR, you get the senior leadership team, and you can get the CEO on board, and you can get the HR people on board, and you can get the resume there, right? But then you go to the hiring manager to Junior's point here, and then if they're not all in, then you hit another roadblock. So, you know, that's how we leverage our Veterans BRG to educate, right? To continue this education around the military and what it does and the strengths, and then also to educate around success stories, okay? So we hired James David, and oh, by the way, you know, he came from the military, and you're like, oh, really? He's doing a fantastic job. So, you know, internally, this company's got to own that education piece. But I love the idea about sharing those ideas, because back in the day when we're trying to, quote, figure this out, we didn't really know where to turn either. And me and Junior talked in the past about how to do that, got some ideas actually at the Veterans BRG event, and then we've continued to develop that, but we had to own that. But it was that education. Now, as those mid-level managers go, hey, I get that, I understand it, I see how successful, because we still bring in junior military officers. And our policy was you bring them in, we'll make an offer next week, they'd have a job next week. And so after we did the first round and we got nobody because we didn't make an offer, everybody's like going, oh my God, these folks are fantastic. Bring them in again, we'll make an offer that day, right? And so we had to call time out and make sure everybody interviews them and then make the offer, right? So, you know, it's just a continued education process, but we had to own that as a company. Had to be committed, but we continue to educate. You know, for us, we're fortunate to have folks like James here that we can go, hey, let me go let you talk to one of our team members and see what you think. And he works over here in CP, Consumer Products. And once they meet James, you know, they'll go, give me a guy like him or let me discover recruit him. So.
Yeah, you've talked about it. I'm curious, you know, kind of a close cousin issue here is the translation piece. And I'd be curious if there are any pearls of wisdom in this world. And I just use a simple example of an Army Sergeant First Class who's been, you know, this guy may be 38 years old. He just got out. He's in E7. He was just, you know, a month before in charge of a platoon's worth of young men and women. He's clearly used to a platoon or more of young men and women. He's used to managing large groups and being task-oriented. And maybe he did it as part of a Bradley fighting vehicle unit. How then do you capture, because that is a certain experience base that it's hard from a leadership standpoint to replicate in growing. So I'm curious if there's any pearls of how you take that and transition that and use it effectively.
Good. From the soldiers' side, from the E7 getting out, Russell and I and HR people have systems set up that just weeds through resumes because we get slammed on every job. And so, you know, you want, and a lot of the one-stop agencies teach this: use civilian down your resume as much as possible. That guy was in charge of 40 people, and Bradley's, I don't know, maybe $10 million of government equipment. And so once you start putting numbers like that, rather than, because coming out of the military, and one of the problems is that if he puts down, you know, E7 platoon sergeant, I know exactly what that was. I know everything he does already. I don't have to have any more detail than that. When he's applying to work in Tyson or when he's applying to work somewhere else, that's not true. You know, they don't have that background. So it's, you know, dollars and number of people supervised is an easy, quick metric to use. And then, again, once you get in the interview, then you can judge the person.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think, you know, if you look at 2 Marines moving, I think a lot of very entrepreneurial businesses are able to focus in on making that translation. And I think there's some very, very large corporations, largely, oddly enough, because of missteps that have led them to take a more deliberate approach to how they're going to handle their hiring. But I was even asking Steve, I'll say, well, doesn't someone really have to just come up with a piece of translation software where you have hundreds and hundreds of terms that apply to a community and a former workforce, and translate those terms into terminology that's common across, you know, a broader employee base. I mean, a very large multinational like a Tyson will come up with their own internal system for whether it's having former service members who can help them translate the lexicon, and I think small entrepreneurial businesses take great pleasure in discovering treasure where other people can't see it. But then there's all those employers in between that represent, you know, far and away the largest portion of the workforce. Anyway, I think Steve's answer to me probably reflected more his concern that I had a new project for him than the real answer. But I just, effectively, that's what we're trying to get over. We're trying to get over a boundary that we haven't built a translation for.
So we actually, there are tools that do this, especially for the service member into different jobs types. So the thing I mentioned earlier in the opening is a thing called My Next Move, which Department of Labor runs, where you can enter, you know, your MOS. So,
Yep.
88 Mike, truck driver, you know, you enter that, it will take you to a page and say, you did these things, you have these skills. You can plug that stuff into a resume. It'll show you the prospects. If you liked what you did in the military, what types of jobs you could go for in the private sector, what the outlook for those type of jobs are, where some of them might be. Other private sector companies are doing similar skills translators for the veteran, though. So to your point, on the employer side, I think there's probably something we can do. DOL has this great database, it's a great repository of data called ONET, which is where we pull the information for My Next Move. So, you know, we'll go back to our tech team on, I don't think we've actually looked at it the other way around. We've always looked at it as, okay, you know, let's get the veteran to put the right terms on his resume. Let's get the veteran to understand what that next career move might look like. And in fact, maybe there is something easy we can do with this open source technology we've been using for all these different projects. Because it is all open source. You know, that's the great thing about, I think, the way we've designed these tech solutions is we don't own any of them. They're not proprietary. You know, anyone can use this stuff and innovate off it. And I think you're going to see a lot of that as we head towards Veterans Day and then after Veterans Day.
Even to take advantage of the Hiring Heroes tax credit, while employers are focusing some level of energy on, is there an opportunity for me here? It'd be a nice thing to do.
You know, one real important part for companies like ours that is a government contractor, right? So, you know, we do affirmative action plans. You know, we're trying to make sure we're hiring people equally. And so when you go out today and recruit, it's not, you know, put an ad in the newspaper anymore, right? As we used to do years ago when I was there, right? You know, today you're going to Monster, you're going to Career Builder, you're going to LinkedIn, you're going to, you know, so the LinkedIn costs you nothing to find anybody, and Career Builder costs you $150 grand a year to have the access to the website. Yeah. But being a government contractor, then, you know, there is rules and regulations around how we go in and source those candidates. Is it the first 25? Is it keywords? Yeah. And so if we go in and use the keywords for our job, there's nothing on that military veteran's resume that's similar to that, then they're dropping off immediately before we ever get there.
Right. Sure.
And there's a gap there, and that's what we need help with, right? I mean, we'd love to be able to go in and kind of dig through and pick out the ones we want. Unfortunately,
so for the veterans piece, you can do some of that now. So I encourage you to go either to www.gov/vets, or go to NRD, which is the National Resource Directory.
Okay.
And on both sides, they'll show you as an employer, we now have the ability to allow you to tag a job. So if you have a listing that you want to make sure to fulfill your requirements, which you do have under law, to hire a veteran for some of these jobs,
Sure.
you'll be able to tag that listing, and when that veteran goes on there to search for a job, he or she will pull those jobs down from
That's the
them.
kind of help we need. Right
Yeah,
there.
and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to do easy solutions that you all can work with.
And then the second part, which I've heard from Maurice and some other folks here, the work they're doing around getting, okay, so now we find this vet and they show up at Tyson.
Right.
Now they got to talk about what's on that piece of paper, right? And so now they've been in combat, right? And now they're coming into corporate America, and it's getting their mind right and their disposition right about how to
Absolutely.
present that and how to talk through that, right? Where we go, yeah, that fits with our culture.
Right.
You know, and that's, a lot of these folks are doing great work around that. That's got to continue to happen, because that helps us when we go to the hiring manager and go, you know, James presented himself extremely well,
Yeah.
right? Resume looked good, skills look good, presented himself real well.
Right.
It's a hire.
Yeah.
That-
So Russell, I appreciate that, and I do want to pivot to you all on the community side, because I think there are a number of factors as we talk about transition, and also as we talk about, and you talked about it in your remarks, the ability to have a network there. You know, I think that's really powerful, because what I find is that a lot of us who get out of the service end up in a place we do. You know, I did a bunch of interviews. I ended up here because I made some calls with some guys I served with and had a couple intros that led to this job. But that's how most people end up finding, not everybody, but a lot of people end up in a job because they knew someone at that company. They had that network and they get that introduction. When we talk about what communities can do better to provide that type of network support, which is across the board, right? It's here's how you talk about yourself, here's how you should present yourself, here's what that employer is interested in. But it's also, if you're dealing with post-traumatic stress or something else, or a family issue, a challenge there, who do you go to for that type of support? And so maybe if you could talk to both of us, you know, in terms of that holistic approach, what is it, you know, that makes San Antonio such an amazing community for the military? What is it that makes Reboot, you know, truly a breakout program, and something that shows success? You know, that your success rates in getting folks into education or employment programs is phenomenal.
I'll let you go first.
Well, and I'm going to switch for a minute.
Okay.
To begin with, my 19 or 20-year-olds don't have a network of anybody to call.
Right.
Yeah.
They don't.
Right.
Yeah.
They are babies, and I don't mean that in a pejorative way at all, but they are young. They joined, especially National Guard, and they went and they came back. There's no network of people to call. And they have a young wife and 2 young babies, and oh my God, it's all they can do to get it through each day and hold that family module together. And I applaud you for your hiring of spouses, because my husband is retired Army and 18 jobs in 31 years. 18 jobs. Now, I have done things, it's interesting, but that's the life that we have had to live as family members. That's what we do, whether they're wounded warriors or not. However, and we have tremendous, most of you are at least aware enough of San Antonio's Military City, USA. That's what they call it, that's what it is. It is a huge bank. People come to me all the time and say, where can I build one of these centers? And my answer is, except for here, probably you can't. The financial and patriotic base that we have there is unbelievable. I think anybody who's been there will understand that. One of the issues our young men have, though, and hopefully there's a solution. Civilian jobs are wonderful. Many of them want a federal job. I'm a federal employee, so is Charles. The labyrinth of a federal resume I wouldn't love to meet whoever wrote it. It is, I'm sure that it does its job, and I have a wonderful federal job, and we all do. This is not, and certainly, there has got to be an easier way. There's just got to be.
So there's hope here?
Oh,
We're
there's
not
absolutely,
there?
absolutely, I wouldn't be here, but he's looking at me,
To your point, I agree. So we've had a special focus on hiring veterans and disabled veterans into the federal government.
Yes.
So President signed an executive order. We've tried to increase and improve hiring practice, including increase retention, which has been a problem too. Because that's the other thing we haven't really addressed. You don't want to just give a veteran a job. You want to give the veteran a job that is worthy of his or her talents. You want to give the military spouse a job
And
that is
many
worthy.
veterans want a federal job because, frankly, there is security. The benefits are wonderful. It's the world we know.
Exactly.
It's the culture we know. At 62 years of age, I have, except for 4 years of college, never lived outside that culture. And for me, it's a comfort zone. And so we do a lot of things. The difference between, as you know, a civilian resume and a federal one is two worlds. We do civilian resume training, federal resume training, the Hiring Heroes job fairs, which are put on by DOL, which are wonderful, Department of Labor. They come in twice a year, and we have, I mean, it is energizing to see what they can do. But for many of our guys, they don't know the date they're going to get out. When you're receiving care as a wounded warrior, there's no date. You know, nobody says, okay, on January 1st, your care is over. So it's hard for them to plan. But all of the things that you do lead me to believe that there are people out there. I'm trying to convince this man to move to San Antonio. I'm willing to give him a hat. No. And because those are things that we can use. But the pervasive culture for our wounded warriors at 19 or 20 is the world in which they feel secure, which is the hospital setting, which is the community like we live in, and Balboa is the same thing, where the military is where it's at, and the safety you feel living in that community is immeasurable. Charles is from California, and he has chosen to stay in San Antonio. And part of the reason for that is, if you ask people why they stay there, we talked earlier, cost of living, cost of housing, federal jobs, but fourth and foremost in surveys is the people in San Antonio, the people who are willing to go the extra mile, the companies that are willing to go the extra mile. I just spoke with a RNDA, is a food development company. I just spoke to their convention. And within days, they've looked at possible jobs and that. We just need to get the word out. But the federal resume issue is a whole nother issue, and federal hiring is too. But all the things you do are wonderful. It's just getting to them on a very young level.
And I got to tell you, Judith, I think that you're absolutely correct. And we know it because we see it all the time. And especially with some of our young kids who want to be able to get in and have the capabilities of doing some great work, especially on the federal side.
Yes.
And there have been some challenges. Some of the challenges have been, if you go to USA.gov, it could be a masterful, unless you have a lot of patience, it can really drive you up a wall. But what we've done is we actually have looked at that. We've brought in some young kids, and through OPM, we have a task force. We actually had a Veterans Employment Task Force, specifically thrown down by the president because he heard the same exact things. He gave the executive order. We were doing really well, and then all of a sudden things just started kind of slowing down. We couldn't figure out what was going on, so we put a task force to see what it was. OPM, DOL, DOD. VA, and a few other areas, just to see what was going on. And so what we've come up with, and OPM has, Director Barry has already done this, is instead of doing core courses or core certain things and everything, is now when you put it into the USA jobs, you actually have your resume. You actually can put your resume. So now, this is where you, Maurice, come in to be able to kind of help, get their, take care of their demons in order for them to be able to go to you to be able to put that piece together so that way they can apply. It's becoming a little easier. And let me tell you, all the federal agencies now, every one of our agencies are basically looking and saying, we want to hire as many veterans as we can, to the point where we have employment representatives in each one of the federal agencies or federal departments that specifically go and their mandate is to hire veterans, young veterans.
Young is the issue.
And the main reason is because we understand a lot of us go out to the places that you talk about. We visit that sort of stuff. Nick, you do this basically as a small business because you're able to do a one-on-one kind of thing. When these young kids come out, they don't have that capability to go to a Tyson and be able to do exactly what they're trying to do. They're trying to get their act together. Hell, I just came from war. I'm 21 years old. The only job that I've ever known was in the military.
That's right.
And some of us already know that. We've been there. We know exactly what that's like. So, yeah, we're hearing you, and the reason why we're doing this is to get that kind of feedback, because then we can go back and say, you know what? We need to improve. How do employers find the right notes so they can get their information to their people? You know, how do we push to that young troop that's trying to get out, who happens to be wounded, and now is trying to get their act together?
Yes, another issue.
So yes, we understand, and believe me, we're working pretty hard on it.
I would add that as we've been doing these workshops for the past year, what we do every day is survey the what out of them, because we want to know what they're thinking, how they're feeling. And what we typically find is 80% don't really know what they want to do at that particular point in time. And so to tell them to go get a job and to put a resume together, in their mind they're saying, for what? I don't know what I want to do. And so what we seek to do is to find the best place where they fit. And so the first step is really, and it's sort of like a question, which comes first, employment or reintegration? Which one is it? Well, it depends on where the person is at, in their state of mind. And so the first step, you have to really find out where are they state of mind so we can determine what the next step is. And so a lot of the data that we found suggests that the first step for them really is the reintegration. They're actually more worried about reintegration than they are worried about getting a job, because a lot of them know, I can just get out and go on unemployment. No problem right there. I still just need to get my head straight. So you have to help them solve that first question, which is how you're going to do it, where you're going to do it, why you're going to do it, and how you're going to feel good about yourself. And then how you're going to resolve these other issues that popped up when you were overseas and you were apart from your family. That you got to put that in check. And so telling him to get a job, but the household is broken, is ultimately going to spill over into the workplace. And so the big issue becomes retention. And what we don't want to do is send individuals to companies that are great assets while in the service, but they go to work for these companies, but because they can't show up on time or be consistent, which is the image that we pretty much painted, it backfires on us. And so the first step is to solve that piece. What we found is by getting them focused on what they want to do, where they want, and how quickly they need to do it, moves them to the next step. And you do have to build their network, and they need to become independent. Remember, they're going from a totally dependent organization, where they're a part of a big system. They didn't have to do anything, have to think about anything. Everything was done automatically, to now I have to do it all by myself. I have to build my network. I have to know how to do this. And you're absolutely right. They don't really, the younger person doesn't know about jobs. They've never had a job before. They went from the house to the military. Now they're told, okay, go get a job. Doing what? I don't know. And the experience that they're going to bring in there is not really going to be necessarily what we want, because yes, they're mature, yes, they're capable, but they're still young.
And I think that's what's interesting. So both of you have focused on a certain part of the population, right? So we're not talking junior officers are generally going to be okay.
Yes.
Your senior
Exactly.
enlisted,
Right.
they're okay. We're talking about,
Larger.
and the data shows this. The data shows this. When we look at the
E3.
veterans under 24 years old, the employment rate skyrockets.
Yes.
Now, it's not a huge population, so there's a lot of fluctuation, but it's between 20 and 30% for that population. And it is a challenge, because they do come with discipline, they're highly motivated, but yeah, they don't have these networks. They have been in a culture where the mission and the objective is very clear, what they do on a day-to-day basis. They know where they're supposed to be, when they're supposed to be there, and they're probably getting out. Some of them, they've done 3 deployments in 4 years, and they said, I've had enough. I want to get out. My family's falling apart, but they don't know, you're right, they don't know why.
There's not a network for them.
They know what they don't want to do.
That's right.
Right,
But
exactly.
they don't know what they do want to do.
And so, as in my reserve duty as a young officer, I'll see these kids, and they're young, they're kids, and they're trying to figure things out. They know they have their school taken care of. They know they're working towards that. They don't, they're reintegrating into society. So, but how do we get, they don't have those networks. So how do we bring the employers and them closer together?
What you said is, to a certain degree, I'm sorry. You said they know what they don't want to do. Many of them want desperately to stay in the military, and that option is not theirs. The dream was out of high school to join the military, you and your wife, see the world and have a couple of children. Plan A is gone. Plan B is now in effect. They didn't want to get out of the military, but for various reasons, they're going to have to. So, you know, for them, many of them, this was the safety net. This was the place where you could achieve and get an education. And overnight, Plan A is gone. And teaching Plan B, I think, is the hard part, because it's what they really wanted. 20 years in the military and see Paris, you know. It didn't work that way. And that's a tough one when you're 19 or 20 years of age.
I think the problem with a lot of them is they don't know where they fit. So it really goes back to, so what do you want to do? Well, I don't know. What do you feel like you're good at? I don't know. Well, why did you join the military? Well, because I wanted to serve. I mean, when you ask the question, why did you join? I wanted to serve.
That's right.
What did you want to do while you were in? I just want to serve. And so how does the military determine what a person does? Well, through the end processing station, you take the Armed Forces battery exam. It categorizes you based upon your aptitude, not on your passions, not on your desires, but on your aptitude and the needs of the military. So you're pretty much fitted into where we need you, not necessarily to where you want to be. So the person is still stuck in that place of, I don't know what I want to do, I'm following the lead. And so that doesn't change after they've been in the service. Even for 10 to 15 or 20 years, that still doesn't change. They're still in that mode of, I really don't know what I want to do because I was told and I fitted and it was okay. Will you do that when you get out? And here's where the big problem comes in, especially with the longer service individuals. Will you do the same thing when you get out? I don't want to do the same thing. I want to do something different. What is it you want to do? I'm not sure. I haven't figured it out yet. So what we do is we walk them up through a process of self-assessments. We do Myers-Briggs, Highland Codes, Strength Finders, Build Your Parachute. And we spend a lot of time digging out of them what it is they want to do. And once they found what they want to do, then there's where they have the lock on. And then they have a refocus and a redirection, which is where we want them to be. We don't want them depending on us anymore for their next step, their next move. They have to become pretty much self-focused. And a lot of those answers are pretty much on the inside. Once you've done that, and again, back to our numbers, once we've gotten them to re-identify and refocus what they want to do, and it's one of those passionate things, they'll say, yeah, that's what I want to do, then go after it. And in some cases, it may be somebody that was a Navy SEAL, but maybe he wanted to do floral arrangements on the outside, but because of the conflict in the warrior status, he didn't want to say anything about it. But that's a skill that he wanted to do. And so eventually the person pursues and follows their passion.
I know some of those.
Yeah.
I've got to say though, I mean, that I love what you're saying, what it sounds that you're doing. I want to learn more about it. But I'm really concerned with these guys that are coming out that don't have time to make these decisions. It seems, when we're dealing with TAP, when we're dealing with any kind of transitionary period, there's not enough time to do it successfully. So I mean, I don't know what an answer would be to that. I'm just saying.
I'll give you. We faced that answer about 6 months ago.
Okay.
And so it's really a decision. Okay, let's say you've decided that you want to go off and do something different that you were classified to do in the military, which requires you to go to school. But you have a present financial need. Your household is not where you want it. You got to have a job. And so the issue there with many people is, okay, so what will you do? And so we ask them a series of questions. For example, and here's where most people don't have the answer. What's the minimum amount you need to survive once you get out? If you haven't defined what you want to do, what's the minimum amount you need? And in many cases, it's like pulling teeth, but we eventually get them to say, okay, X number of dollars. And so in some cases, they'll say, well, the minimum amount that I need is $35,000. Then the next question is, what's your maximum amount? What's that targeted dream amount? And that may be $60,000 or $100,000. And so the question becomes, okay, well, Bob, if I can give you a job, paying you $35,000, because you said that's your minimum and you do need a job, will you take it? And, again, there's a little indecisiveness, but ultimately, yes. And does it matter where you work it? And so what we do is work them through that decision to get them out of a mindset of, they're locked on over here, and we use the phrase lock on, lock out. And when you lock on the one thing that says, I'm only going to do this, I'm only going to get a job making $60,000 a year, well, what happens when that job doesn't come? Mm-hmm. You've been waiting 18, 24 months for that job, and it hasn't come, where you've had several other opportunities, maybe a dozen opportunities at the $35,000 level, but you wouldn't take it because you locked on that. And so we have those discussions with them. And so we get them out of that mindset. It's all about the mindset. We get them out of that mindset that it's only this, and we move them over to, here's the opportunity. take this opportunity until you get in a position to do the next step and the next step and the next step and work them there. And in that result, we're able to move people, into employment.
And I could also put in a plug for something the administration's added into the post 9/11 GI Bill, which is that there were pieces of the old GI Bill that had this, but the new one actually has housing allowance built into it, so that kind of recognizing you need to get by while you're building up the skill set to move on to the next thing.
And I think also, I'm glad you brought that up, because October, this past month, there was a new series of changes which included funding for vocational training, which is new. So, it's another advantage that we don't talk about probably enough that veterans bring, that they do come with the ability to fund their own education, fund their own training, whether it's an apprenticeship program, a vocational program, or going back to school. But again, this is where the network is important and that transition is important, because we want to make sure that veteran, because of the urgency to get out, and we tell everybody, go to school, go to school, go to school. So now you've got a 22-year-old who's done, let's say, 3 deployments, has a wife, has a young kid, and says, I'm going to school. Goes to school, finds out, let's say, 3 months in, that the school thing wasn't for him or her. It happens a lot.
Yes.
It does. So it's again, it's about, for us, I think, doing that transition, doing those interventions earlier on. And now we're working on a program to do this, and we've talked about this previously. There's a VA/DoD-led task force that included some of what was rolled out on Monday, but one of the big pieces is this sort of transition boot camp. We don't know exactly what that'll look like, but the idea is do more upstream. We've got to do more while that member is still in the active duty service, while that family is still there, because that's where they're comfortable. That's the culture they know. And if we're trying to do that 6 months, a year after they've separated, much harder problem set.
Well, and our big concern, as all of you know, is depression. And suicide is always on the forefront.
Yeah.
And there was a study done recently, which applied to retirees my age, but it applies to everybody, and it applies to our young men and women. If you don't have a reason to get out of bed every day, at 65, your life expectancy is shorter.
Sure.
It is some of them look and they say, okay, I've got enough, I've been medically retired and I've got this, I can get by. That whole other psychological factor is just as important as the money. You gotta have a reason to be successful and to get out of bed every single day.
Yeah.
And if you don't, depression becomes our enemy, as it clearly is today.
And I would go back to the networking piece. One of the things that we do is we have them join associations, business groups. We put them out in the field a lot because, again, it's getting outside of the military comfort zone. So you need to go to networking sessions where there are business roundtables, where there are employers, where you could practice your 30-second spiel. It's really all about getting outside of the comfort zone. When you advance in the military, you very rarely take or do any kind of interview. And so most of us come out in the 0 category on interviewing. And so you got to be able to speak, very fluently and very comfortably in front of individuals. So we push them out in the field. We take them everywhere. We do the job fairs, but we send them to different groups like NDIA, the National Defense Industry Association, AFCEA luncheons, where they're totally outside of their comfort zone. And a lot of them, scream and yell and fuss. I don't want to go do it. But we push them out and say, no, you need to go out and you need to network. And simple things like getting a business card. 95% of the individuals, actually 99% of the individuals come in, don't have a business card.
Well, they also don't know how to pick out a suit, because if you're in the military, you never, it's stupid to you, but you have a lovely tie on, and all day, how do you know? My husband never picked out a suit or a tie in his life. That seems very small to you. It is huge. It is huge. Those decisions.
So we tell them, get rid of the core fram shoes.
Yeah.
Throw the core fram.
Hey, there's no problem with that, okay?
But he's going to hold his no. But those are small things that are huge in their minds. That's right.
Back to Matt's point about, getting these kids engaged before they get out. I mean, hey, we go on college campuses and we make commitments way before they get out too, right? And then, and when they come into Tyson, I mean, we have a we've just redid it again, getting ready to roll it back out in January. Very structured by design, because the new generation coming out wants to know what's it going to look like the first year.
Yes.
A very structured training program for supervision and operations, right, where First 2 weeks, you're at this location. Next 9 weeks, you're going to be in Northwest Arkansas. And you're going to learn this, this, and this, and this. And you'll be taking tests and demonstrating you can do it. Then you'll go back to that location, and you'll get more. We 100% designed it as close to what the military does,
which is great.
as we could.
Tell me
We
what I'm
took-
supposed to do.
As our CEO says, the answer's in the room. So we went and grabbed people that's been in the military and
It's a
said,
great
come here,
idea.
we're going to
Yeah.
build a training program. They want it to look like this. And it's got to be, got to have chickens and pigs and cows and all that in it. But we need these people to understand this, right? And so the young men and women come out and go, I get that.
Which
And
I think is a
So
great
we'll roll that
idea.
back out in January. And we think that's,
Well, that's
once
the-
again, you got to own it, right?
That's the
You
life that
gotta
they
own
live.
it.
That's the
And,
life they
and as
live.
we believe, the answer's in the room. So, if we don't have veterans in the room when we're making these decisions, we need to go grab some. Hey, James, how would this work at Tyson?
It's a
How do
great
we
idea.
do this? And that's how it's not me coming up with these ideas. It's great folks that are veterans that are in our organization already that help us design that. So our new operations training program is totally designed. Even the rewards and recognition is going to look real similar. So we're trying not to get into any.
Which is a
training.
great idea.
Great,
I
great
mean,
idea.
that's so simple,
Yeah.
but it's a great idea.
It's a great
I
idea.
got to tell you, one last thing I'd like to say to all of you is I'm absolutely honored that you all are taking that leap of faith. You've taken that leap of faith. Some of you didn't really need to take a leap of faith because you've been living it. For others, you had to take a leap of faith because you had to kind of look at it and say, and then when it finally happened, you went, wow, this is pretty cool. I think I can handle this.
Yep.
That is the type, and what we are all doing here, and what the First Lady and Dr. Biden has done, and what the President is trying to do, is to make sure that everybody else out there understands that these young men and women have that capability. They didn't come into the service at 18 years old knowing that they were going to be a truck driver, a tank driver, a person that was going to fix an aircraft, a gunner, whatever it may be. They had no idea that. I know I didn't. And the military showed me a certain thing, gave me a certain amount of education, showed me some discipline, helped me get my stuff together, which is where that comfort zone came in. And now you all are taking that leap of faith of bringing in, forget about what it says here. Look in their eyes, see their heart, and you know they're going to make your companies grow.
A better place.
What, at least from what our perspective is, we need you all to kind of join forces and get other people to see the same thing. Because let me tell you, although you may think it gives somebody else an advantage over your business, in actuality, it enhances everything that you do. Nick, you see it every day. When your guys do good things and somebody else, that other company becomes better because of what you've done. And all we're going to do is grow. And so when these kids come in, no matter how many influx we may have, people are going to open up their hearts and they're going to do the right thing and hire the people that are going to help them be successful.
Absolutely.
And as business people, that's the bottom line.
So, no, with that, I think Junior said exactly right. And what I want to make sure, though, is that, we've had just a wide-ranging and I think very productive conversation in many ways, but it's got to continue. And I think this is an amazing group. That the reason that the White House, the President, and the First Lady, and Dr. Biden wanted to recognize you all is for the amazing work you're doing. So we want to make sure this is a continuing conversation. That you all continue to give us, real and honest feedback. If certain programs are falling short, if parts of the federal hiring system are still overly bureaucratic and challenging,
I love the system.
if you all see an opportunity where you can help us or we can work together to make sure that a company understands the competitive advantage of bringing on a veteran or a military spouse, those are the types of things we want to do together. So again, it's an honor to join you. For me today, I really appreciate the time. I appreciate you all traveling here, even if it was just 4 blocks. It's just really amazing to be around such a great group of people. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, likewise. Hey, I've enjoyed working with several of you to date. I've learned a lot from the folks that I haven't met and looking forward to staying engaged. I think you have a wealth of incredible ideas that when you take these ideas and combine them with the ability to administer them and have an effect, it really makes a meaningful difference. So thanks so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.